Good evening, dear friends. Today, I continue my topic on thoughts and motivations. Globally, what I will talk about today can relate to any ethnicity. I will talk about Armenians, but we can replace Armenians as an ethnonym with any other name of any other people. So, when they talk about unification, when they talk about something new, when they talk about success, when they talk about joint efforts. So, can Armenians, for example, unite? Could they unite? This is a very deep and important question. Exceptionally deep and important. To unite into a single whole, it is necessary to understand why. It is necessary to have a big goal. You set a big goal, and already in accordance with this goal, tasks are formed to achieve this goal. When you don't have a big goal, to unite for the sake of uniting, or to be friends for the sake of friendship, this is simply ineffective because it doesn't work in any way. What does it mean when any nation wants to unite? Several conditions are necessary to achieve several levels. Unification occurs on a cultural background, basis, on a social certainly, on a political and on a spiritual level. Those key ideas that are declared, but no one understands how to achieve them, often turn into a slogan. Unification through common values. Accordingly, to unite through these common values. These common values, which are repeatedly and variably outlined by Armenians, must be presented to all Armenians around the world as a concept. Yes, Armenians all over the world have a common historical and cultural heritage. Of course. Is all the historical and cultural heritage, which is in books, which is in the minds of a certain part of the elites, known to all Armenians? No, it is not known. There is no unified information network. Of course, it doesn't exist. We are talking about the revival and spread of the Armenian language. Armenians have walked this path many times. The revival of traditions, art, and history should become a powerful unifying factor. Always. The goal is achieved only when it is clearly defined for what purpose. There must be a goal. For example, what could be the goal of today's Armenia? Initially, it is the establishment of a state on the territory that Armenians currently have, in accordance with the administrative division left by the Soviet Union, with artificial borders. But these artificial borders comply with international law. This is exactly how the world and international law are accepted. The dissolution of the former Soviet Union. Armenians had opportunities to change these borders. We know what the Armenians led to in 2020. Since this is the result of the Armenian nation globally, it could have been completely different. Therefore, at this stage, the goal first and foremost, a realistic goal, could be the building of an effective state. Only an effective state can set other goals. If we skip the goal of building an effective state, we end up nowhere. And this we could be anyone. Are there effective states among Armenia's neighbors? There are states achieving results. For example, Azerbaijan, there are global states such as Turkey and Iran. There are states like Armenia which do not achieve any results. This is Georgia, which achieves even worse results than Armenia as of today. Accordingly, to talk about something greater, it is necessary to start with building an effective state. Here is a remarkable example. Take a look at Singapore. Take a look at South Korea, at Japan. These states are effective due to properly written matrices. If there is no properly written matrix, if you do not understand where you are coming from and where you are going, accordingly, you will end up nowhere. This is the first point. To build such a state, a territory like this must have very effective national security forces, intelligence, counterintelligence, and the army. So effective, not to fight with neighbors, but so that neighbors do not think of fighting with you, and you could focus on building an economic base that would allow for the development of other projects. These are the tasks facing any country, and Armenia as well. Certainly. Two components: ensuring security, the security perimeter, and accordingly, then it is possible to attract investments and internal development. Is Armenia developed enough today to offer something to its neighbors, in any sense? Except for culture and history, historical heritage. As of today, we can talk about favorable, established internal circumstances, and those created. This is security. Yes, it exists. This is, compared to neighbors, a free economy. This is a democratic way of life and agreement with society. This exists, but it is not so super effective that it could be sold to someone, in a good sense, to offer. It doesn't work that way. If Armenia had the level of organization, like for example in Singapore, then it would be a different matter. Then people would talk to Armenia differently, and they would travel to Armenia. Accordingly, ethnic Armenians. This needs to be understood. Of course, it is necessary to develop projects, and again for this, a framework is needed. To strengthen the diaspora and its connection with the homeland. Everything that was done before this was ineffective and largely operated based on national traditions. It largely operated based on what previous generations had done. Yes, the Armenian diaspora is vast, it is very active, but it is not systematized in its relations with Armenia. There are no common programs. Accordingly, as long as these common programs do not exist, and naturally, they need to be developed if, for example, Armenians want to achieve something. It is necessary to establish these strong connections between the diaspora and Armenia. If Armenia is not moving in this direction, the diaspora must now create this activity. What could this be? With joint projects, undoubtedly. To come up with these joint projects and implement them. It's logical. Often, many such projects are implemented, but they are not massive, effective, or global enough to change anything within Armenia or to attract active forces, diasporas. This does not exist today. Naturally, these are educational programs. Where should such coordination centers be located? Logically, in Armenia, on the territory that you control. Just like any programs related, for example, to Mongolia, should be on the territory of Mongolia and be coordinated from there. This is logical. For this, again, effective matrices and leaders are needed, effective ones who could handle this. Naturally, general educational programs, investments, and diasporas must play a key role. But when will all this happen? Only then. Next, overcoming internal disagreements. If you want to do something in Armenia, your rhetoric should not be that he is bad and he is good. For example, you don't like Prime Minister Pashinyan. Propose something better and engage the people in it. But if everything remains at the level of chatter, he is bad regardless. Whether he is bad or good, maybe he is very bad. But if you propose nothing, it turns out you are engaging in imitation, in profanation. If you are unable to propose a program, suppose you are the opposition. Here, part of the opposition in Armenia proposes Russia as the only alternative. But this has already happened. The results are known. Defeat on all fronts, the loss of practically all ethnic territories. It was precisely as part of Russia that the number of Armenians kept decreasing. And many other circumstances. Another part of the opposition proposes a Western future, proposes to raise questions related to the revival of Armenian power. How can you revive power with a population of 3 million people? How can you revive power when you are supported by 7% of the population, when you have not been able to win the hearts and minds of the people? This turns out to be the same again, a sham and imitation. Therefore, overcoming internal disagreements is the most important aspect. A nation that cannot overcome internal disagreements will never get anywhere. Accordingly, Armenians need an internal social contract. Different political and religious views should not divide. They should be opinions. That is, Armenians should and can learn to argue, but not to feud. It is necessary to argue and discuss, not to incite internal national hostility. The result of internal national hostility today, and this result over the last 2,000 years. This is the result to which internal hostility has led. The inability to communicate within the nation, the inability to argue, but the ability to feud. Therefore, it is always necessary to seek common goals. And what common goals can all Armenians have? It is the development of Armenia, right? It is the security of Armenia, and it is the preservation of Armenian identity. In order to systematize and unify all that baggage of enormous volume, which is the Armenian civilization. The Armenian civilization is needed by Armenians. When I conduct my programs, I do not conduct them for representatives of other nations. Anyone who is interested can listen, anyone at all. The French, Italians, Turks, Azerbaijanis, Georgians, but I conduct it for Armenians, whom I divide into two groups. One group is those who are interested and they listen. And this is a global group. I expect nothing from them, but the other group is smaller. These are those who are not only interested but want to participate and act, and this is the Armenian youth, who gain an understanding of the Armenian world and Armenian civilization through such programs. Here is my target audience. When you ask my opinion about any political party's leaders, look, I do not live in Armenia. Accordingly, I certainly have an opinion about everything. Of course, I have this opinion, but this opinion does not have, if I will only express it, and resembles several major Armenian bloggers who engage in endless criticism. What's next? They talked, gathered views, collected likes. Next, where will they go with this? People listened, agreed. Everyone will continue living their own life. I'm not interested in being in this pool, in this group. I, as much as I can, try to do projects, cultural, educational, political, projects in the field of security. Moreover, I will tell you that all my projects are aimed at the future. Because today, expecting practical results from these projects is not serious. What can be expected when, at this stage, the train is going in a certain direction? You can't stop this train. You can jump in front of the train. You can stand on the tracks, but you can build the next tracks and build them so that this train doesn't disappear. For this, you contact politicians who make decisions. For this, you try and create projects that change mentalities, that create a common understanding. I believe in this. I am simply continuing what my ancestors and like-minded people did. That's why I tell you, Armenia needs to focus on itself. This is very important. Armenians need to focus on Armenia. When the house has burned down, trying to build something from the debris is not serious. A new house needs to be built. And a new house can only be built on a solid foundation, exclusively. Having done everything collectively to lose in 2020, it didn't happen in 2020 or 2019. It was deliberate. Armenians were leading up to the arrival of 2020. Now, trying to do something is not necessary. Of course, it needs to be done. Armenians' rights need to be restored. For restoration, issues of autonomy need to be addressed. But when you have destroyed the second Armenian state with your own hands, I am speaking about the Armenian nation as a whole, such as the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, with your own hands. And after that, now trying to do something and living with phantom pains out of inertia will lead to nothing. This is not the way to solve it. Interests need to be protected. Movement is necessary. But only powerful, effective states are capable of solving tasks. And the issue is not about territory, not about population. Although with a population of 3 million, you can't get anywhere. I'm telling you right away. This is too small a population. And this is the most important task of changing demographics. And the demographics of changing qualitative demographics. Imagine what would have happened to Israel if Jews and Ashkenazim had not come there. And the population would consist of Sephardim, Mizrahim, Falashas, Jews of Kurdistan, Georgian Jews, Mountain Jews, without Ashkenazim. Israel would be a second-rate state, resembling the worst examples of small Arab countries. Do you understand what I'm saying? The return must be of quality. The most prepared, educated segments of the nation should participate in governance, but not the most uneducated. This is the worst that can happen. And this has been happening with Armenians for a long time. When leadership is in place, when negative selection occurs, this is a big problem. New leaders are needed, dear friends. A leader and dialogue. There must be leaders who inspire victories. Not leaders who do not understand what they are doing or where they are leading anyone. There are many such leaders in the diaspora and in Armenia. A leader must show the goal, must organize, must work systematically within a program where everything is clear, where everyone understands, where they participate and how they participate. This kind of leadership is needed in the army. No single person can save anyone. It is undoubtedly a collective effort. Accordingly, there must be platforms for open and honest dialogue between Armenians from different countries and social strata. It is necessary to communicate, to discuss, to choose various formats of solutions. In this situation, in this region, under these conditions, It is necessary to clearly understand the goals and objectives of our neighbors. It is necessary to understand in which goals and objectives you can find your place and where that place is. Sometimes you are simply not given that place and you need to make other decisions. And here we come to the most important thing, which I focus on: education in youth. Why is this exceptionally important? Because unification begins only with the younger generation. When you light a fire, a candle, and the youth drives this unification. Therefore, investments in education, cultural exchanges, and programs of unity and identity. This is the key to long-term unity and success. This is how it happens, dear friends. In any case, any nation that wants to see itself tomorrow must see its concept. It's a program of futurology. Here is a certain concept, for example, that every leader of Turkey offers to their people. It's either the Ottoman Empire or Turan. What they can, as far as they see the viability of Turkey and its integrity, they offer in that aspect. That's it. Well, for example, Azerbaijan sees itself only. It offers nothing. Separately, there are no elites there who could offer something. And those who are there are also smart guys who think, but they are in opposition, or in Europe. Right? Accordingly, Azerbaijan sees itself in Turkish projects. It's a simple option as part of the Turkish nation. Well, that's clear. What concepts does Georgia have? Even weaker and worse than those of the Armenians, although it seems it couldn't get any worse. But it can. That's Georgia. Zero prospects. Zero. National project and thinking. There's nothing. And nearby is Iran, which lives within its Shia discourse. Everything is very simple there. When you study the script, you'll understand where the round is going. That's the situation. You are well aware of the international situation. I have told you about it many times. In this situation, I am trying and acting in this direction. But it's not just me. I am one of many. I am just a person who, like any other person, has a certain amount of knowledge, certain visions, combined subjective views. At the same time, it is necessary to consider that my views, my background, my vision, they differ significantly from the environment that exists in Armenia and existed in Armenia, in present-day Armenia. This is logical. I belong to those layers of Armenians who are practically not represented in Armenia, or are represented so minimally that their voice has never been heard. This is my vision, based on my knowledge, as everyone has from their background. Accordingly, dear friends, I am engaged in such activities, expressing my opinion. When I talk a lot about history and the contribution of Armenians, I will tell you once again, I am completely uninterested in what non-Armenians will think about it. I am not even interested in what will be thought about it. The majority of Armenians. But it is very important to me that young Armenians living in different countries around the world hear me, understand, digest, and be guided by it. Not by my words, certainly I am just a person, but by the immense potential and cultural heritage that Armenians possess. Therefore, today I of course also proceed from real possibilities. And I only speak about what works today. There were many projects, they played their role. A lot was working. I simply cannot tell you about many projects because they are related to special areas, and I provide assistance there. I assist, I do not lead these projects. I want to tell you that the projects that are working have an educational nature. There are several of them. I won't repeat myself. I talk about them in every broadcast. You can read about them in the Telegram channel header and see them as live products. This is much better than doing nothing. Of course, I would like, for example, I gave a very simple example. All the projects that are educational exist. but they currently bring together a maximum of 100 people. 100 listeners. Of course, I would like it to be 1,000. But it doesn't depend on me. It depends on your interest, dear friends, on how you will join these projects, subscribe to them. Well, how else can I influence this? By constantly urging you. Come join us. You should have an internal desire. Appeals are very good. But I do what I have to do, and you choose what you want to do as you see it. It's your desire. Also, let me give you an example, for instance. The large encyclopedia that was created. It is already approaching 5,000 articles. Recently I mentioned it was 4,000. It was created for you to learn and read. You just need to subscribe there. No need to spend any money. You subscribe and learn. I am speaking on behalf of the editors also of the encyclopedia. There are people working there who are creating it. You understand, I have neither the opportunity nor the opinion. I am not a historian, although I do have my own position. In order to codify, gather these materials, and simply upload, let's use that word, to this encyclopedia. Accordingly, this is done by a team. You understand that this team spends their time on this. They need to be supported. These projects need to be funded. Therefore, I ask you to join the encyclopedia. You fund the encyclopedia, for example, right? But that is also your choice. I can't even check and find out at what level this is happening. That is, it's your choice, conscience, and thousands of other circumstances. As you wish. What depended on me, I have done. I created this platform. And so in other directions. One person can ignite. And one flower, said the great Armenian commander, Georg Mars Petuni, that even one flower brings spring. These are good words, regardless of nationality, whoever said it. Accordingly, I do what I can to bring about this spring, so that there are many people who will be dozens of times more successful. And there were many smarter than me, because everything is limited, and we are all born, we die. And everyone's intelligence is limited, and mine is limited too, each of us in certain areas. Therefore, my aspiration is for there to be more educated, intelligent people. The processes in the world are quite complex. They threaten everyone, even those states that seem to be on top right now. The planet is very small, and resources are very limited. It is necessary to understand this. Problems are increasing with almost all resources. Food and drinking water supplies are taking on an increasingly important role. This is a global problem. Uncontrolled birth rates as well. Those territories with few children automatically become targets for conquest by peoples who have many children and do not control their birth rates. They do not want to or are unable to manage large migration flows. Consequently, a large number of children and a lack of quality education lead to the reproduction of a poorly educated humanity, not burdened by cultural or any moral obligations. This is the world we live in. We have entered an era of endless and prolonged wars. The so-called peace lasted very conditionally. There were constant wars there as well. But the conditional peace after World War II lasted about 45 years. A world in which there were also a huge number of wars, about which you are aware. But now we are in a situation where war can come not only to every country, to every region of that country, where anything can happen. We need to be prepared for this. It doesn't matter anymore who you are and where you live, whether you live in Georgia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Turkey, Armenia, or France. This concerns all people, good, bad, smart, and not. We live in a very complex, ambiguous time. And yet, globally, as humanity, we are still at a very low level. We kill each other. We rob each other. We lay claim to other people's money. We lay claim to a huge number of things that do not belong to us. That's it. This also concerns other people, men and women, differently. We cannot find a formula for development that would allow all regions on Earth to develop. It doesn't work. In general, humanity fails at many things. Pressure, tension is growing, and it results in wars and conflict. We have not found answers to the question of how to resolve these contradictions. The globalists tried to resolve them and are still trying. Now, this is the main force by mixing everyone and everything into one. Such a common human mass, with common customs, common views, easily manageable, easily controllable, as it were. Now a new wave has come, the conservatives, who are trying to reintroduce separate, segmented development for successful and unsuccessful regions, for those who can earn money and those who cannot. Neither concept is not only imperfect, it is not implemented today. There are no results. There are no results at all. No one thinks if there were a world government, they would think about how to make life within Pakistan decent. They are not dealing with this issue, or within Nigeria, but they are engaged in constantly draining huge masses of the population from there, who arrive in the foreign culture of Europe, destroying this culture. What good can this lead to? To nothing. To even greater upheavals and problems, dear friends. This is the essence of my explanation today. These are my thoughts that I wanted to share with you. In order to, once again, I appeal to everyone to meet. Any level it is necessary to learn, to think, to develop. This applies to any country. It is necessary to be governed by wise rulers, to choose wise rulers. That's it. For that, it is necessary to have elites. It's terrible when we have no elites or most of the elites are destroyed. That's it. Therefore, all work, all effort, all movement. There is nothing in this life besides systematic work. That's how it is, dear friends. Today's my philosophical, in a sense, ether. Thank you very much and see you next time.